Grantheon awoke with a start. His heart was pumping, and he knew that something was very wrong. He rose from his bed, cursing the aches and pains he felt in his lower back. He could overcome many things, but not age. After a moment he identified the feeling. It was danger, which could only mean one thing. He retrieved the sapphire ring from his bedside table and slipped it onto his finger. He chanted a few words under his breath, concentrating on visualizing his target, the matching ring. He cleared his mind and let the spell do its work. He started to see images, and with an icy rush found himself looking into a room. He saw his son surrounded by dark shapes. He strained to look further, to see more details, but he could not. The tightness in his chest and physical reaction were now confirmed in his vision. His son had been taken and was in terrible danger. "Fool," Grantheon said, including both his son and himself in the comment. His own pride and arrogance had driven his son away. But also it was his son's foolishness and lack of care that had landed him in this predicament. The trouble was, there was no time to save him. Grantheon ran his hands through his white hair, trying to think of a solution. If he didn't act fast, his son would cease to be his son. They would transform him into something else, something similar but not the same. The essence would be there, but people were never the same after turning. He could not allow that to happen. There were many spells at his disposal, but his mind kept going back to one. One he was saving for his final hurrah, his final gift to the world. But it came at a cost, and there was no going back. No matter how he approached the problem, this was the only solution. It was his life's work, but it looked like fate was forcing his hand ahead of schedule. "Oh well, now is as good a time as ever," he said. But before he left, there were preparations to be made. Grantheon shuffled over to his desk and retrieved paper and a quill. He wrote swiftly but legibly 2 letters, one addressed to his successor and one to his son. After he was done, he donned his traveling robe, packed a satchel with 2 crystal orbs, and took one last look around the room. It was his home, and he would never see it again. Relics from his many journeys littered the room. Magical artifacts, books, treasures, and keepsakes. Each one told a different story. Now he had to leave and forge one last tale. He left the room and closed the door behind him. The tower was still and quiet as the other elder wizards were all asleep, but he didn't want to take any chances, and quickly cast an invisibility spell with a secret inverted hook that would hide him from the other wizards. He would now be completely invisible, and not even a trace of magic would be detectable by standard methods. He crossed the large chamber and headed towards the stairs. He'd never enjoyed them. They were entirely too small, and he always felt unsteady on the long walk down. But this time they were like friends, speeding him on his way. He had a new purpose, and it would be fulfilled soon. Once he descended from the tower, he looked out across the courtyard. It was empty as expected, but he could still see images of many of his triumphs and those of his students played out before him in his mind's eye. "Nostalgic old fool," he told himself, and kept walking. He headed straight for the stables to retrieve his trusty horse Whitemane. They had been on many journeys together, and it was fitting that they would go on one last quest. As he entered the stables, Whitemane was awake and waiting quietly. "You always seem to know something before I do," Grantheon muttered to the horse. He led Whitemane out and prepared him for travel. Grantheon walked out the main gates beside Whitemane and looked back at the Wizard Academy, his legacy. "May you stand the test of time and solve that which I could not," Grantheon said, then mounted Whitemane and rode off into the forest. Once he was out of sight of the academy, Grantheon let the invisibility spell lapse, now that the immediate danger of being spotted by other wizards was over. Next, he needed to travel somewhere elevated to perform the spell. He knew of a smaller mountain nearby, more of a lofty hill if he was honest. But time was against him, so he decided that it would have to do. It was also centrally located within the country of Avaria, and he knew that his son was also somewhere in the vicinity, but he could not track him further. Whitemane ran with incredible speed, as if he understood the urgency. Grantheon was glad. He didn't want to push the horse too hard. There were other means of speeding this up, but he needed to preserve his strength. He would need every ounce for the spell.